The Stanley Cup Finals finally get underway on Saturday. We've got you covered. Plus, what will Utah's new nickname be? We'll have that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, you're not seeing things if you're watching us on YouTube. Rachel has not drastically changed her look. This is Seth Toupal, a familiar face to Locked On NHL viewers, filling in for Rachel today. And thank you for doing that, Seth. And here we are, one day away as of recording time from the start of the Stanley Cup Final. And how excited are you for this matchup?
It is about time. Like, I know that you want to be respectful to both teams if one series goes long and the other doesn't, but it feels like it's been months since there's been an NHL game. And so I'm just excited for the matchup. Obviously, you've got kind of the team approach versus the superstars in the Panthers versus the Oilers, but it should be a fantastic series, and I can't wait.
Yeah, me too. And then, you just sort of add to the mix, the Florida Panthers have never won a Stanley Cup. They were in the final last year, get all the way back, trying to finally get over that final hurdle. And then the Edmonton Oilers, who haven't won since 1990. No team based in Canada has won since 1993, which is still hard to believe. And you have the makings of a lot of drama coming up for this Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, it should be very fascinating to see how this plays out, because you can go position by position. The goalie battle is going to be a big one between Stuart Skinner and Sergei Bobrovsky. It is the first opportunity for Connor McDavd to get a taste of the Stanley Cup Final, and so that's a big matchup as well. But this is, on the Florida side, it's fascinating too, because this team came up just short last year, and it seems like they just have been on a mission all season to try to show that was a fluke and to finish the job this season. So just a bunch of fun angles to look at. Of course, Matthew Tkachuk traded from Calgary to Florida, getting the opportunity here. Just a bunch of storylines that make this a compelling watch.
One storyline I wanted to ask you about, Connor McDavd, you mentioned his first appearance in the Stanley Cup Final. How important is it for his legacy as one of the greatest players of all time to at least win one Stanley Cup?
I think it would put him on a different, it elevates his plane if he gets one, as opposed to being, let's say he would go throughout his entire career without one. He'd be one of the best to ever do it, to never win a cup. There's always that distinction at the end. He was one of the best to ever do it, just never got that cup. If he gets this one, and that it's like quarterbacks in the NFL. We view quarterbacks that win Super Bowls differently than we do the ones that never got a chance to. So it would put him in the upper echelon if they are able to finish the job. And I think it takes him from, one of the best regular season players ever to putting him into that conversation of just one of the best ever.
Yeah, I never knew how. I didn't think it was always fair, but it does work that way. And I think of some of the great players who never won a Stanley Cup. Marcel Dion always comes to mind. Brad Park was in the playoffs every year of his Hall of Fame career, never won the Stanley Cup, was in the final like 3 or 4 times. But yeah, it does put a player on a different level in the eyes of writers and fans and everybody else. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not he gets that, elusive Stanley Cup. And it's harder now with 32 teams than it certainly was. Another player who is a longtime veteran who is looking to win another Stanley Cup is Corey Perry. And, he won one 16 years ago with the Anaheim Ducks and hasn't won one since. It was his second NHL season. And, this is now his 4th Stanley Cup final in the last 5 years. After winning with Anaheim, he's lost with Dallas, Montreal, and Tampa Bay. So he's the first player in league history to make the final with 5 different teams. But A, this may be his last chance. He is 39. And B, is there a Corey Perry curse?
It's fascinating to just look at all the angles that Corey Perry brings to this final, because let's not forget, he started the year with Chicago, and that whole situation went down. Edmonton brought him in to add some veteran presence, some oomph to their lineup. And I believe he had 8 goals in 38 games. So he put up some decent numbers with Edmonton down the stretch. It is just crazy how you can get to as many Stanley Cup finals as he has and come up short in all but one of them. It just leaves you with a lot of great kind of lessons for athletes. Getting to one as early in his career as he did, you maybe kind of think this could be something I could get used to happening on a yearly basis. And then you go a few years without it. It would be just I think it would be probably the perfect way to end his career, would be to stamp it with another Stanley Cup after getting one so early in his career. And then you wash out the bad taste of all those losses in a row. But he still brings a much needed snarl to that Edmonton team. And so Edmonton is hoping that there is no curse. They're hoping that it's just a good omen to get them there, and that they've got the right mix to finally finish the job here this year.
And a little irony, if you think about it, he wins a cup in his 2nd season, and then he enters his prime, probably his 4th season, and in the prime of his career doesn't go to the cup final at all. And then when he's a veteran and he's the guy they're adding, to get them there, this is now, 4 in the last 5 years, and he's still not won another one. So got to hope, for Corey Perry's sake at least, that he will be able to raise another Stanley Cup, and not going to be easy. I will save our predictions for a little bit later in the show, but I will say this: I would be shocked if this doesn't go 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, it feels like Florida is going to, maybe win the first game or the first couple and take a bit of a lead like Dallas did against Edmonton. But then you saw the Oilers adjust and really just dictate the pace and the tempo the rest of the series against the Stars, something they're very capable of doing. And there have been a lot of people, I think, that have said, Panthers in 5, somewhere along that line. You just, at this point in the season, you just don't see those type of rollovers in these types of moments, because teams have expended so much energy to get to this point. They're not just going to, it's not just one of those where it's like, geez, we're overmatched. Like it may just not be our year. Like, you're fighting for the only thing that matters. And so even if Edmonton falls behind 0-1, 0-2 in this series, there's going to be a push. And so 6 or 7 games, just like we would all want it, I think is definitely how this series is going to play out.
Yeah, me too. And do you think the layoff that both teams had, because it was a 1 day difference between the two teams, do you think that favors one team over the other?
I think at this point, it just kind of gives both a clean slate. both teams, at this point in the year, you've got guys that are banged up. That's just how it works. And so, if anything, it's going to allow for, I think, a big push to try to take game one. I think we'll see both teams really, really go for it, and so it could be that we see, more burst, more effort thrown in, as opposed to being kind of more tentative, and just waiting to see what your opponent's going to do. I think it'll help both teams. I don't. On the rust side, I don't think that hurts either particularly too much either. So I think it's just kind of a clean slate for both sides.
Yeah, should be interesting to see. And the thing about the rest, they always fill it in hindsight. If the team plays poorly, they lost their mojo. They just didn't have it. And if they play well, they got healthy. But it has more to do with looking back at it than it does, when you're actually figuring it out. Anyway, we have got a lot more to discuss. We will have our predictions for the Stanley Cup Final. We'll also discuss Utah, the former Arizona Coyotes. They have down to 6 name finalists. We'll break those down. All that and more still coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and you can get a panoramic view of your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So, Seth, the former Arizona Coyotes, former Phoenix Coyotes, former Winnipeg Jets, actually, if you want to take it back far enough. But the Coyotes, we know they're moving to Utah, and we now have 6 finalists as far as what the name of this team is going to be. And well, they've had more than 520,000 votes from fans. And here are the 6 finalists. Now, this voting is going to run through June 20th. They have the Utah Blizzard. They have the Utah Hockey Club, Utah HC. The Utah Mammoth, the Outlaws, the Venom, and the Yeti. Your thoughts initially on these 6 finalists?
Many of them feel a little too they don't feel unique to Utah. They feel just very if you were playing NHL 24 and we're creating an expansion franchise in the game, this feels like a bunch of preloaded mascot choices that you can select from. But it just, I think the thing that is missing here is there just isn't anything that is really unique to Utah. And you could go the generic route and go Utah Hockey Club. I'm not a huge fan of that.
No.
Utah Blizzard feels like an infringement on Colorado Avalanche. I feel like having those 2 teams that close and basically being the same thing is kind of weird. The Outlaws is, I feel like, on the right track, but still not where it needs to be. The Yeti is a no. I guess out of the options, the Venom is probably the leader, at least if you had to pick one of these. I would probably go with the Venom, but again, it just doesn't do it for me. And the Mammoth, I'm gonna say no to that one too. Like I feel like there could have been a better choice from any of these that are the finalists.
I mean, I kind of like Mammoth. I mean, I guess it's the little kid in me who loved fossils, you know. I mean, but and I guess there could be some fun logo and mascot ideas off of Mammoth also that I could see, you know, a mascot Mammoth and little kids kind of running up to you know, be excited about seeing the Mammoth in the arena. But I agree with you; these are not awesome names, and none of them really scream Utah to me.
Yeah, like it's they've got the NBA team, the Utah Jazz, and so one of the
Which
ones
is
that I
also not exactly screaming Utah, but there's a reason for that name also.
but I went with, like, I threw out as an idea the Utah Rock, just to kind of play off of that. I mean, you have mountains in Utah, so
You do.
you could play off of that a little bit, but even that is not like, that still isn't one that just like grabs you by the collar and like demands your attention. It's just, I mean, I think like I said, I think the Outlaws was on the right track, but it just feels like it needs a little more to it than the Outlaws, and that's probably because I think of the Las Vegas Bandits, which were
Right.
that was a created team in the NHL games for so many years. Like, you could create the Las Vegas Bandits. It just feels like something like that. And the other weird thing about this, Gil, in just reading with these names, is that this, whatever is chosen, will be appearing in 2025, 2026.
Right.
They're just going to go with Utah for the first season of this relocated team. So all the more reason to maybe try to find something that sticks and hits a little harder. I don't know. It's just like I look at all of the different possibilities, and I just am not wowed by any of them.
No, I'm not either. And, you know, another interesting observation, there's only one of these names that has an S at the end that is plural.
Yeah.
So every other name is sort of going against the typical, you know, team name that ends in S. And I think we're seeing more of that recently in sports, but Outlaws is the only one. And it's not Mammoths, it's Mammoth. You know, and I don't know. I'm not thrilled with these choices, but I guess I could live with most of them.
Let's do this. I've got the list of the I've got the original 20.
Okay.
Let's just see if any of these jump out as maybe like, hey, why did you get rid of this as an idea? This is what you should have gone with. So you have the Utah Black Diamonds, the Utah Blast, the Utah Blizzard, the Utah Canyons, the Utah Caribou, the Utah Freeze, the Utah Frost, the Utah Fury, the Utah Glaciers, heavy ice theme with all of
you
these.
Noticing that?
The Utah Hockey Club, the Utah Hive, the Utah Ice, the Utah Mammoth, the Utah Mountaineers. I feel like I'm going to put that in the same category as the Outlaws. Like, I'm intrigued, but it's just not quite there yet. You've got the Outlaws, then you got the Utah Powder, the Utah Squall, the Utah Swarm, the Utah Venom, and the Utah Yeti. You know what it's going to end up being? It's going to end up being the Yeti, because then you can basically, You can do a spin on the Jack Link's Sasquatch mascot. You can do a spin on that for your home arena, and that would be something that would be fun with the kids.
Yep.
If I had to pick one that I think will be the finalist, I'm probably going with the Yeti.
So I'm just trying to get the ring of this. Okay, and McDavid dumps the puck into the Yeti zone. Okay, it'll take some getting used to, no matter what the name is, obviously. But yeah, and the mascot. If you go with Yeti, do you go cartoonish? Do you go scary? Like, how do they, intimidating Yeti or a friendly Yeti? Like, what? How are they going to go with the mascot if it goes that route?
I would go intimidating with the logo and cartoonish with the mascot.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Like you've got so many mascots throughout the NHL that kind of have that kiddish appeal to them. And you can, you could take Gritty as an inspiration and just say, hey, white fur and fangs, and there's your Yeti. Like, there are a lot of different ways you can go there. You could go the way that the Minnesota Wild do, where it's more of a like muscular type mascot, and just go white fur. Like, it feels like there are a lot of different inspirations they could draw from that. So maybe I am kind of talking myself into it a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, Yeti works. It does work. So we'll have to see. But next round will come up in a couple of weeks, and it'll be interesting to see where they go. Again, kind of weird that they're saying it's not going to take effect for a whole season, and yet they seem to be rushing through these candidates. Yeah. It's like, if you're going to rush, why not use it this year? But okay, it's a process, right?
That's their prerogative.
Exactly. It's a process. All right. We have got more to discuss. We will have our Stanley Cup Final predictions. We've got a great player hanging up his skates and another great player who is on the trade block. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channels app. So, Joe Pavelski, one of the better players in the league over the last decade or so, announcing that he is hanging up his skates, and, sad to see that his career is coming to an end, but it's been a very productive career for Joe Pavelski.
Yeah, absolutely. All told, 476 goals, 592 assists, 1,068 career points in 1,332 games. Things that I will remember about Joe Pavelski is he was one of those guys that I think had respect throughout the league. Like, as somebody who, played the right way, he was a great teammate. He was a fierce competitor on the ice. Not somebody that you ever kind of questioned the way he did things, and very durable too. Like, I'm looking at his year by year statistics, and almost a half dozen to close to 10 seasons in which he played a full 82 games or played, 81 or 80. Just a guy who played every night. He was just an absolute demon in the faceoff circle with a career faceoff winning percentage of 55%. And you look at his career when he got to Dallas after leaving San Jose, was a 25 to a 28 goal per season guy, and right around 70 to 80 points. Like, he just was a machine out there from a productivity standpoint. And somebody that this is the other interesting angle to this is it seems like he is getting out with something left in the tank. You know, you so often see athletes try to hang on too long. It seems like he is A, going out on his terms, and B, is not like he still is going to have something left for his post playing whatever he ends up doing, whether it be, you know, hopping into the broadcast booth or hopping into the TV studio or just deciding I'm just going to take some time for myself. It seems like he has, you know, a healthy enough post playing career to where he's going to be able to get some great time just enjoying whatever it is he wants to do.
Yeah. And, you know, so productive. You mentioned in Dallas, 27, 28, and 27 goals in the last 3 seasons. And that's at age 37, 38, and 39. So, yeah, he certainly is still capable of being a productive NHL player. And here's another interesting stat about Pavelski. 18 seasons in the NHL, and he was a plus player or better, you know, 0 or better in every year except 1.
Wow.
I mean, that is, again, plus minus, yeah, it's a team stat. But if you have 17 seasons out of 18 where you're, you know, even or better, that shows you're helping your team do something. So, got to give him credit. Lane Lambert, now going to be hired by the Toronto Maple Leafs, former Islanders head coach and a longtime assistant coach. He seemed to follow Barry Trotz everywhere he went. Your thoughts on him heading over to Toronto next year?
You know, it is interesting because you hear Craig Berube looking at bringing some of his former St. Louis assistants with him. And obviously, anytime a coach goes to a new spot, you have some of that. You want that familiarity in your coaching staff. But it's, you know, the obvious thing that jumps out to me here is Lane Lambert is a guy who's been around for a long time. He's got a well-established pedigree as, you know, a long-time assistant. And coaches value that. A guy that can bring maybe a little bit of an outside perspective from having seen a bunch of things, particularly in the Eastern Conference. And so I think that's a great choice for Berube to bring with him to Toronto to just help be a sounding board. Because, you know, as much as head coaches like to kind of be the voice and be the one that makes all the decisions, it's nice to have another set of eyes that can bounce some things off and can say, you know, I would maybe do this way, as opposed to how things are being done. I think it's a great choice for Berube.
I think so too, and I've always liked Lane Lambert, and he's always been a very good assistant. He didn't necessarily work out well as head coach of the Islanders, and part of that I think is because he was an assistant there for a few years, and it's hard to make that transition sometimes from the assistant who's the buffer between the head coach and the team, and then all of a sudden you're the head coach. But I wish him luck, and I think it's a good choice. The Anaheim Ducks, Pat Verbeek, their GM, says he is listening to trade offers for Trevor Zegras. Does this surprise you, and is it wise?
I think the way the Ducks are looking at it is they have a ton of talent right now, but they maybe are looking to try to flip some of that talent for a more proven vet that can lead the team, because that's, I think, the next thing that Anaheim needs is somebody to show them the way. Like they have a ton of young players that are very capable of putting together successful seasons. Just need somebody to show them how to do it. And the fact that it is Zegras that's the one that is being looked at is a little bit of a surprise to me, because he's a tremendous talent. But that's kind of the price of doing business is, you know, you want somebody that can come in and be a mentor for Leo Carlsson in particular.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of the price of doing business. If he does become available, I would love for selfishly for the Minnesota Wild to get involved, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. I mean, he's 1 year removed from a 23 goal season, limited to just 31 games this past year, 6 goals, 9 assists, but he's 22 years old. So he still has a large part of his career in front of him. And so if Anaheim goes this route, you better make sure you get what you want in return, because so often we see these types of trades come back to bite the team that is sending the player out.
All right, before we head out, your Stanley Cup Final prediction: who wins and in how many games, and who's the Conn Smythe winner?
I think this is the crowning of Connor McDavd. I think we see the Oilers get it done in 7. I think McDavd ends up taking home all the hardware because, to be honest, the Oilers are going to need him to be prime McDavd to have a good chance in this series. I think he does it, though. I think he's been waiting for this his entire life, and he is looking for the opportunity to show the NHL world what he is fully capable of. And I think he rises to the occasion. So I'm going Oilers in 7, and I think we get the full Connor McDavd experience through those 7 games.
All right, I'm going the other way. I think it's the Panthers in 7. I think they wear down the Edmonton Oilers. I think they'll be down 3-2, and they'll take the last 2 games because their physicality will eventually do just enough to wear down Edmonton. And I think Connor McDavd will win the Conn Smythe on a losing team. So I'm going bold.
I like it.
So, all right, that's going to do it for us today. I will be back on Monday interviewing 3 of our local hosts, and I guarantee you 2 of them will be in the Stanley Cup Final. So we'll have that covered. And again, we are here every Monday through Friday covering the top stories from around the NHL. Seth, thanks so much for filling in for Rachel. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.